Hello and welcome to Chapter 3 Notes on Process Costing. So in this lecture video we're going to go over the basics of process costing, and then in subsequent lecture videos we'll go over some of the problems that are involved in, or how to do process costing, the actual math and then the mechanics on how to do process costing. Okay, so let's talk about process costing versus job order costing. So Chapter 2 lecture videos covered job order costing. And job order costing systems are used when we have more custom products that are, or unique products to specific customer requirements. And with job order costing systems, remember what we do is we track the cost by the job. On the other hand, with process costing, we're talking about similar or identical products. That would be those kinds of products that would be used for process costing. So, for example, a soap maker. Okay, or a cement manufacturer would be using process costing, okay, versus an antique furniture manufacturer would be using job order costing. An automobile repair shop would be using job order costing, okay. So when we talk about some similarities here and some differences, I'd say the first similarity is we have the same basic purpose, okay. And the basic purpose is to assign materials, labor, and overhead to the products that we make, to figure out how much does it cost us to make whatever we make. And so both job order and process costing systems, they are known as product costing systems. They're both product costing systems. So again, basic purpose is to assign labor, materials, and overhead to the products that we make. The second similarity is the same manufacturing accounts. Remember, we have WIP, work in process, finished goods, we have raw materials, and we have cost of goods sold. Okay? So WIP, FG, work in process, WIP, FG, finished goods, RM, raw materials, and cost of goods sold. And then what we can say is the same basic cost flow. Remember, the cost moved from raw materials to work in process to finished goods, and then when we sell them, then move to cost of goods sold. Okay? When we talk about some differences here between process and job order costing, we can say with the number of products, we can say many different types of products. We could say one or similar products. Okay? Costs accumulated by job over here. It's over here it's by department. The primary report used to keep track of costs is the job cost sheet. Talked about that in Chapter 2. Process costing is going to be the production report. How do we calculate unit costs? It's over here by job. It's over here, it's by department. And then how many WIP accounts do we have? Remember, with job order costing we just have one, and then with process costing we have many. And more specifically here, each department will have its own WIP account. So if we have a mixing department and we have a bottling department, we would have WIP mixing and WIP bottling. Now, the way I've gone over this and the way we'll kind of address this in this class is that these are two, we treat a company as either this or that. So we're treating this as a dichotomy. But in the real world, this is really two ends of a continuum, job order to process costing. So you can have some companies that use a hybrid system. So they would use some job order and some process. They're in between. And so that's what we say over here, product costing systems don't always fall in between. Job order process costing systems, the two ends of a continuum. For example, you can consider Ford in the sense that cars may be manufactured in a continuous flow, which is more suited towards process costing. However, individual cars could be customized. They may have a special music system. Maybe one is manual, one is automatic. All kinds of different options now that you can get on cars. And that customization would be more towards a job order, okay? So what we can say over here, manufacturers of relatively wide variety of closely related standardized projects, such as TVs, dishwashers, washing machines, would be using a hybrid costing system, cars as well. And so a specific type of hybrid costing system would be an operation costing system. So in that case, we would, over here, we would be charging materials to batches as in job order costing, but conversion cost, which is our labor and overhead, would be assigned to batches as in process costing. So I think the take-home message here, and what I want you to really understand, is that some companies use hybrid costing systems. They don't have to use just either or. There are shades of gray, so some companies can use part job order, part process, okay? But for the problems on the test and the way that I'm going to explain it from now on, from this point on, is it either company is predominantly job order or predominantly process. We don't go into too much detail on operation or hybrid costing systems, okay? We look over here with our quick check problems. We'll look at this one. Process costing is going to be used for products that are different and produced continuously. No. Similar and produced continuously. Yes. Individual units produced to customer specs. No. Okay. Purchase from vendors. No. That has nothing to do with that. Would be a merchandising company anyways. Which of the following characteristics are associated with the process costing systems? Not heterogeneous, homogeneous projects. Continuous production, not discontinuous. Costs are not traced to jobs. They are job order costing, but not process costing. Costs are traced to processing departments. The best example of a business that requires a process costing system, well, anytime you see this, okay, custom or antique, that means job order. That means to customer specs, right? That means unique. Automobile repair shop would also be a job order costing system. A soap manufacturer, okay? There are different types of soap. There's different lavender, vanilla, all kinds of different types of soap. But the thing is, it's still soap. It's not as different as somebody bringing a car in to get a Virginia State inspection versus somebody else needing a transmission fixed. Those are two very, very different things versus different types of soap, still soap. Okay? So it's kind of like similar products. Costs in a process costing systems are not traced to jobs. They're not traced to customers. They're not traced to customers, company admins. They're traced to specific production departments. When we use the term conversion costs, what we mean is manufacturing overhead plus direct labor. That's just a term that you need to know. And those are the costs that we incur. The way I think of it is the cost that we incur to convert the raw materials to a finished good. Prime costs is another term that is equal to our direct materials plus our direct labor. Okay? When we talk about the term processing department, we can refer to a processing department as any location, any department in which we add materials, labor, and overhead to the products. So if we think about it, if we make soap and we have a mixing department and we have a packaging department, we would have a mixing. We could add materials, labor, and overhead to the mixing department, and we could do the same thing to the packaging department. Okay, and those would be two processing departments. So the activities in the processing department have to be done uniformly on all products. That means all soap has to be mixed. All soap has to be somehow packaged. We would have a separate WIP account for each processing department. So we would have a WIP mixing, WIP packaging. We can add overhead, labor, and materials to any processing department. And the total costs move as we move through each department. So all we'd have, right, is WIP mixing, WIP M, would transfer its cost to WIP packaging. And that's what I say. I just use that term, transferred in costs. So that means the cost incurred in one processing department is moved to the next processing department. And so the total costs increase. So if you think it over here, they have their raw materials to mix the soap, they mix it. And once it's been mixed, it moves to the packaging department. And as it goes to the packaging department, they start putting it on all the nice, cute little bows and all that other stuff that they do for the soap. And total costs will increase as it moves through from WIP mixing and through WIP packaging. And then let's say it then goes to finished goods, FG, and then it would then, once it's sold, it would go to cost of goods sold. So when we talk about a transferred in cost, we would be talking about, in the context of this little picture, we'd be saying that whip mixing transfers its cost to whip packaging. Okay? What I said over here, each processing department will accumulate product costs, another type of costs, in a separate whip account. So we would have whip mixing, whip packaging, and then if I wanted to know total whip for this company, and these are the two processing departments, I would add whip mixing to whip packaging to get total whip. Okay? You see over here, overhead is typically applied to production just as it was with the job order costing system, where we take our total overhead, our total estimated overhead divided by our total estimated allocation base and multiply it times the amount of allocation base used. We will use a separate overhead rate for each department. Okay? So we talk about product and cost flows for process processing systems. Look over here. Here's our T account. Now remember, work in process. This is an inventory account. This is an asset account. It's a current asset account. Finished goods, this is also an asset account. So you have over here, this is increasing, right, work in process because it's on the debit side. We have our debits and we have our credits, right? That's why it's on the debit side, because it's increasing the total WIP account. We have our materials, labor, and overhead added here to WIP, and then once we finish the goods, right, let's assume that this is WIP packaging. So this is the last finished goods, last work in process account until we move it to finished goods. So in that case, we have our WIP packaging, and what we would do is credit WIP, just like what we saw back in Chapter 2, and we would debit finished goods. Now, what we did back in Chapter 2 is we said which jobs had been finished, right? We said jobs 101, 102 are finished, and then we would credit WIP for jobs 101 and 102 and debit finished goods for the total cost of jobs 101 and 102. With process costing, we're not tracking the cost by job, right? We're tracking it by department. And the other thing that we're doing is differently is the way that we figure out what's the cost of those jobs of the products that we've completed. We say, how many units have we completed? Now, in terms of units here, with work in process, we're talking about pounds of soap, or gallons of wood preservatives, or liters of beer. Okay, we would say, how many of those units have we completed times the average cost per unit. Now we can take the average cost because we're dealing with similar and identical products. That's why it doesn't make sense to do this for job order costing, because the average cost, right? If you think about an automobile repair shop, people could be bringing in a Virginia State inspection versus a muffler change, and they're two very different costs. Virginia State inspection is way less than the muffler change. Okay, so it doesn't make sense in that case to take an average, because the deviation of the cost is all over the place. Okay, versus if we have one type of soap that costs $1 and another type of soap that costs 99 cents per gallon, the average unit cost is pretty similar. So we don't need to separate it out and do the $1 versus the 99 cents. We can just take the average. How many bars of soap, or how many gallons of soap, or whatever you want to go with, did we finish making times the average unit cost. We can take the average again because it's similar, identical products. Same thing over here with the finished goods once we sell it. Okay? And then, of course, that comes over here to cost of goods sold, and this is when it shows up on the income statement. Okay? All right, I'm going to stop this lecture video here, and then we will continue on with the next one talking about cost flows and process costing. Thank you.